thinking about building a jazz record collection. In this video, I'm going to share some tips and ideas on how to do so. Hey, vinyl community, it's Jason from the Jazz Basement coming at you with another video. This one's a little bit different. I'm not going to share any new finds with you, but I wanted to do this video for quite some time. I've had a lot of people reach out to me either in the comments or through email asking kind of how I approach my record collection and asking me questions in terms of what they should be thinking about. So I tried to kind of assimilate all of that and put together hopefully a cohesive video for you. So what are some of the things that you should be thinking about if you're building a jazz record collection? Or any record collection for that matter? I think first and foremost, it's important that you build a record collection around your tastes, okay? That you build the record collection for you, not to impress other people, not to have it be the be all to anyone who may come over and visit you or anything like that. At the end of the day, you've got to build a collection that you're proud of, that you're happy with. And that can mean different things to different people. It's highly individualized. No one can answer that question except for you. For me, it's 90% jazz. Okay. That might not say I don't like other music, but with respect to listening to records, listening to vinyl, most of the time I'm listening to jazz. Do I like Dua Lipa? Yeah, absolutely. Do I want a Dua Lipa record? No. So it just depends. But I think if you start out with the inner compass that you're building a record collection around your tastes, I think that's a really good first step. The second point is you have to have an honest assessment with yourself. How committed are you to vinyl, right? Now, I mean that because on the one hand, vinyl has never been more accessible than in the past couple of years, but it comes with trade-offs as well, right? I mean, if you are a music lover, you could sign up for Spotify and you have an entire catalog of the world's music at your fingertips that you can listen to on your phone or whatever. You know, vinyl, you've got to have a turntable, a phono stage, you've got to worry about cartridges, you know, just the setup to play records. And then, you know, you've got to be prepared to, you know, take some time to find what you want. You know, it's not like you can just walk into any record store and get the record that you want at the price you're willing to pay, you know, at the drop of a hat. So for me, I like vinyl. It's a physical, tangible connection to the music. You know, in some cases, I do think it sounds better, but not exclusively. I think specifically for jazz, I feel like vinyl is the preferred format. This is just my opinion. You know, that was the format of the 50s and the 60s, which is the format, you know, which is sort of the jazz that I really enjoy, that sort of hard bop era, plus or minus on the fringes. You know, and you've got to take some crackles and pops that come with listening to records. You know, if you want a perfect playback experience, vinyl's not for you. Obviously, vinyl takes up space, but there is something nice when you pull out the record and you read the liner notes and you physically have something. You know, it's eco-friendly. It's been around for a long time. If you don't like it, you sell it. It goes back into the vinyl community ecosystem. So, you know, how committed are you to vinyl? The third point is, are you a music lover first or a collector first? And it's not really an either or. It's kind of where you fall on that spectrum, right? And on one hand, if you're just a music lover, the world's your oyster, right? You can go on YouTube, Spotify, Tidal, Qbuzz, you name it, iTunes, and have all the music at your fingertips in the world. if you're a collector, that's a different ball game. Um, I think it's gotten a lot harder to be a collector in some ways. It's gotten a lot more expensive, certainly over the past couple of years. Um, but that will dictate your priorities, right? Um, and probably more importantly is the next point, which is really there are three dimensions that you need to think about and optimize. Um, One is money, time, and condition. Okay, and sort of think of it as you can prioritize two of the three at any given time, right? Unless you have, uh, I guess, unless you have a ton of money, um, and you want to buy the best condition stuff, you know, you're in a rare breed. But if you um, don't have a ton of money or don't want to allocate a ton of money to your record collection and you want the really best, first pressings, then that's going to take some time to find deals. And you've got to be prepared to wait years and years and years and be prepared maybe never to find something in your price range. Um, or if you're thinking, same thing with condition, right? Everyone has different thresholds. Some people are okay with playing, something that has a lot of surface noise, and for them, having an original press of something, having something that's good plus or VG minus is good enough to have, a record that would be several $1,000s if it was in VG plus condition, right? So it's time, money, condition. You got to figure out which of those three priorities. Now, if you're a music lover, you're probably, well, I guess it doesn't matter if you're a music lover or a collector, right? I mean, you could be either one of those, and you're kind of optimizing along those three. For me, I'm kind of a little bit of both. I love music. I do like the collecting element. I do like the finding original presses. I don't buy a lot. I try and buy the best condition that I can, um, and I'm patient. So more on that later. The other element I think which is really important, particularly if you're just starting out into jazz, um, the less you know, the slower you should go. Um, and and I kind of fell into this trap. It's not really a trap, but when you're first starting out, this isn't a hey, what record should I start with? But people will say, hey, start out with Kind of Blue, start out with Time Out, start out with Love Supreme or Blue Train or Giant Steps or something like that. And you start buying all these records. Oh, you need a Herbie Hancock record, or oh, you need this and that. And you end up buying, a lot of records in a short period of time. And really, I think the better approach is to start slow and buy one record and listen to it and see what you like, right? Do you like the drums? Do you like horns? Do you like piano? And then read the liner notes and see who's playing on that record. And then maybe stream some more and just have a little bit more focus. Um, if you're trying to go down the collector route, there's a very steep curve. Um, not all presses are created equal. There's a huge difference between a Blue Note 767 Lexington Avenue press and a Liberty press, a black B or a white B blue label. In terms of price, in terms of sound quality, that's ultimately up to you and your ears. And for some people it's worth it. For other people it's not. Um, but in my view, it's important for you to go slow, right? Jazz isn't going away. Better to try and minimize your mistakes when you first start to go. Largely because if you're buying a bunch of records and you don't like it and you go to sell them and you sell them to a shop, you're only going to get a fraction of what you paid for that record. So it's selling records outside of Discogs and eBay which is a whole different can of worms, is basically a loser's game, unless you inherit a bunch of records and it costs you nothing. The last point I would say is the importance of building relationships with your local stores. And I've mentioned this a lot in these videos. Most of what I have found has been through local stores. And this is, record collecting is a community, the vinyl community, right? We talk about it all the time. It's about making connections, making relationships. And that works both ways, right? Um, there's a handful of shops that I talk about a lot on these videos: HR Records, Record Exchange Silver Spring, Psalm Records, Red Onion, Memory Lane. Those are all local. I'm in the shops all the time. I know the owners. They know me. They know what I like. When they get something interesting, they let me know, right? They have my phone number. They shoot me a message, um, because they know that I'm going to come in, and more often than not, I'm going to make I'm going to make a purchase, and they're going to make a sale. When I have records that I sell, I don't sell on eBay. I don't sell on Discogs. I bring them to the local shops, generally for store credit. So having those relationships are really important. Now, what happens if you live somewhere where there aren't any local record stores? Um, that's tougher. Um, you know, I mean, you're never going to build a relationship with someone on eBay or Discogs, right? You're just going to be a transaction, most likely. I would try and find the most local record store, right? Maybe you have family somewhere, you travel for the holidays or something, right? Where you have some tangible connection. Some record stores will, brick and mortar stores do sell online, right? And again, it's about building a relationship. You don't have to spend hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars to get their attention. A lot of the times, the shops just want their records to go to a good home. Um, yeah, if you spend a lot of money, they're gonna remember you, certainly. I mean, they're a business, they've got bills to pay, so that's understandable. But building relationships is really important. Um, if you're on Instagram, I've met a lot of people through YouTube as well. I mean, you'd be surprised. A lot of the really great records that I've gotten have been through friends on Instagram, or people who have become friends on Instagram, right? It just depends. So particularly for the rarer stuff, someone just upgraded, to a better condition copy, and you don't have something, you just never know. So those are kind of the five ideas, right? You've got to build a record collection that suits you and is built for you. You've got to make an honest assessment of how committed you are to vinyl. You've got to understand, are you a collector, or are you a music lover, or somewhere in between? But usually there's a balance. Usually you're going to lean one way or the other. I think it's really important to optimize how much money you're willing to spend, how much time you're willing to spend, and how important the condition of the vinyl is to you. I think it's really important, if you don't know that much, that you should go slow. Um, and then building relationships, super important. So how I think about my collection. So a couple of things. One, I've mentioned this before. I don't aspire to have thousands of records. Um, from day one, I never aspired to have that many. The truth is, I don't have a lot of time between my job, my family, travel schedules to listen to music. If I get to listen to a record a night, that's a pretty good night. So I have 300 to 400 records, space for 300 to 400 records. I'm probably at 350 right now, and I'm fine with that. But I build my collection around that, right? So when you see my recent finds, I'm only showing you the stuff that I really, really want. There's no extra, I don't go to a store and buy 5 records and only show 2 on the video. I show you basically everything that I buy because there's no filler. And there's no knock on buying $5, $8, $10 records. Again, if I aspired to have a larger, a larger collection, then that would be different. And for me, I really enjoy the collecting element, right? I want the original presses. I like the thrill of the hunt. Um, Again, no knock on Tone Poets, no knock on the reissues. In some ways, this is your if you want something on vinyl, we're in the glory days of that, in terms of the various reissues. So we're all lucky in that respects. And I have plenty of Tone Poets and reissues in my collection. Um, the second part is, and I'm pretty ruthless about this, if it doesn't get played, it's out. Okay, you've got to know your taste. I can There's dozens of records that I've bought because someone made recommendation, or you see this like group think sometimes on Instagram. It's like, wow, this keep seeing this record. Everyone's posting this record. I gotta find it. And you buy it. And it's like, it's not for me. Not to say that it's not a great record. It's just not for me, and that's okay. You got to know your tastes. You got to know your lane. Um, and that's a lesson that I've learned over time. So I have no problem if it doesn't get spun. I'll trade it. I'll move it on. I'll gift it to a friend, or I'll sell it to a local shop. No no love lost. Um, Buy once, cry once. That's the third one. Buy once, cry once. This is something I learned from my dad. In his view is he has kind of a collector's mentality, has a eclectic mix of interests and tastes, and unfortunately none of those were jazz records. But his view is it's always better to buy the best that you can afford, right? Within your budget, within your means. For some people that might be $10. For other people it might be $1,000, $5,000. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what that dollar amount is. Just try and buy the best that you can within that. And I've seen this before, where particularly if you're just starting out, you go to a shop, you're like, oh, I found this record, it's $10, just because you're like, I just want it. And then a month later, you find if you're talking about a Blue Note, right? Maybe you buy a 75th anniversary for $15, and then a couple months later, you buy a Liberty Press, and then a couple months later, you buy um, a second press, and in my view, it's just better. So my thought process is, it's really quite simple. It's, do I have this in any press on vinyl? Yes or no? And it kind of depends, right? If it's one where there's a high quality reissue, I'll buy the reissue. Okay? And then that becomes my placeholder copy. Um, Cool Strutting's an example of that. I have a Music Matter Jazz Cool Strutting. That'll be my forever copy until I find an original Cool Strutting OG press. I may never find one. That's okay. I'm not losing any sleep over it because I have, in my view, this is before Blue Note Classic Series came out. I had the best version of Cool Strutting. Better to have a copy than not in your collection. Now, my point is, I'm not going to go and buy a 1966 earless mono press and do these intermediate steps. Um, Again, it takes time, it takes money. My view is it's always better to have a record in your collection and the best version of that you can. And it doesn't matter if it's a reissue or if it's an original press. For me, all else equal, I would love an original press. It's not feasible. In many cases, it's part luck, part timing, and also budget constraints. Um, Fourth point, I know what I like. I don't buy a lot. Okay, I know what my lane is. I have a pretty narrow wish list. It's about 8 to 10 records at any given time, that I'm looking for. Many of them I have a copy of, a reissue, but I'm looking for an OG. And then others that I've been listening to, I've got introduced, they've made recommendations, I've streamed it or whatever. I don't buy often, right? When I go to the record store, I would say 8 out of 10 times I walk out empty handed. That's just the truth. I might go a month or 2 months without buying a single record. Now, there have also been times where I've gone a weekend and I've gone to three different shops and come home with 12 records. So you just never know, right? There's this element of surprise. But when opportunity presents itself for something that I want, I pounce. Um, See my last video um, with Quiet Kenny, with Clifford Jordan. I mean, any one of those I would have pounced on. But to have that opportunity to buy, you know, those level of records, I couldn't say no. And on that note, last one, things aren't as rare as you think they are. Um, you just have to be patient and or connected. And I realize that this is not easy for everyone to do. There are bona fide rare records out there, right? That it is they are hard to find, right? You cannot walk into any record store and buy Quiet Kenny. You couldn't even buy a reissue of Quiet Kenny up until really RSD last year. But this year, my local shop had two copies of Quiet Kenny, right? That's an anomaly. But all I'm saying, I'm not saying that that's going to happen to you or your local shop, but it happens. It's possible, right? Don't psych yourself out. Don't get upset and say, I'm never going to see this. I'm never going to, you know, this is at least for folks that live in urban areas in the U.S. I understand that if you're in the U.K., I've a viewer who comments. He's like, oh man, I'm in the UK. We never get stuff like this, right? The shop's never, and I understand that. But maybe there's opportunities in continental Europe, in Germany, or I bought stuff from German sellers, from Dutch sellers, things like that. So you might have to get creative, um, but make your wants known. I until I found Soul Station, everyone that I came in contact with, either from YouTube, local shops, if I traveled, uh, friends on Instagram, everyone knew I was looking for Soul Station, and they're all like, "I'll keep my eye out," and I have a copy of Soul Station now. So don't get discouraged. You might not get everything on your want list, but if you're patient, you're persistent, keep an open mind, make connections, good things will happen. So, um, I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you got some ideas. Would love to hear from you in the comments. Anything I missed the mark on? Anything you agree with? Again, this is 100% my opinion. There's no right or wrong answers here. I just want to share some thoughts on how I would give advice towards collecting jazz records if you were starting today, and just a little bit more color in terms of how I build my collection. So until next time, have a good one. Peace.